Ah, there you are. I have been waiting for you. Grab a chair and your favorite drink and sit back and enjoy. Let's begin. The farmhouse smelled sharp and burnt. The rain had stopped, but the damp clung to the floorboards where the mimic had dissolved. Braylon knelt by the hearth, scraping the last of the industrial salt from the bottom of the canvas sack. His fingers brushed against grit and thread fuzz. It wasn't enough. He poured the gray granules into a smaller leather pouch. It barely filled the bottom. This was the stuff used to scour rust off plowshares, full of impurities and sand. It had burned the creature, but it hadn't killed it. It had just made it angry. "That's the last of it," Braylon said. He didn't look up. Miriam stood by the stairs. She wore her heavy winter coat, the wool smelling of mothballs. Her boots were laced tight. A canvas pack hung from one shoulder. She just watched him, her knuckles white where she gripped the strap. "We have food," she said. Her voice was flat. "Dried apples, some cheese. The water skins are full." Braylon tied the pouch to his belt. He grabbed the blight slayer. The sword felt dead in his hand. The hum that had vibrated through the hilt earlier was gone, replaced by the cold, heavy reality of neglected steel. He planted it and levered himself up. His knee screamed. The joint felt like it was filled with broken glass. He gritted his teeth, waiting for the wave of nausea to pass. Kestrel sat in the armchair, his velvet robe steaming slightly in the warmth of the dying fire. The old man looked smaller than he had an hour ago. His skin was the color of parchment left out in the sun. "The seal is fractured, Braylon," Kestrel said. He didn't open his eyes. "It'll come back, not alone. They smell the breach." "We're going," Braylon said. He limped to the door. "We need iron that cuts and salt that burns. We can't fight a war with gardening tools." "Time is a luxury we spent 20 years ago," Braylon murmured. He rolled a river stone between his thumb and forefinger. "Do not linger." Braylon opened the door. The morning air was cold, carrying the scent of mud and pine. The yard was a mess of churned earth and broken fencing. He stepped out, his boots sinking into the muck. "Stay close," he told Miriam. She followed him out. She didn't look back at the house. The road to the village cut through the fields, churned into brown sludge. Fog clung to the hollows, thick and opaque. It muffled the sound of their boots. Braylon set a hard pace. He had to. If he stopped, the adrenaline would fade, and his body would realize how broken it was. Every step sent a shockwave up his leg. His back seized in rhythmic spasms. He hit it. He kept his chin up, his eyes scanning the mist, his breathing controlled through his nose. Miriam matched him step for step. She didn't slow, didn't hitch, didn't carry 20 years in her joints. "Where does Silas live?" Braylon asked. "Old Forge, east of the square. He doesn't come into town much." "I remember him," she said. "Big man, smells like coal. He gave me a horseshoe once when I was 6. He was a good man, once." They passed the first of the outlying farms. The fields were empty. No livestock, no smoke from the chimneys. The silence was heavy, pressing against Braylon's ears. It wasn't the peace of a sleeping countryside. It was the quiet of a held breath. They reached the forge 20 minutes later. It sat at the edge of the village, a squat stone building with a collapsed roof on the south side. Weeds grew waist-high around the anvil that sat outside the door. The chimney was cold. No smoke, no heat. Braylon stopped at the gate. The iron was rusted shut. He vaulted it, landing heavily on his good leg. Miriam climbed over. The door to the forge was closed. Braylon didn't knock. He hammered the pommel of the blight slayer against the wood. "Silas!" Silence answered him. "Silas, open the door! I know you're in there!" A shuffle of movement from inside, the sound of a heavy bar sliding back. The door creaked open a few inches. A face appeared in the gap, dark skin, gray beard, eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in a week. Silas looked at Braylon, then he looked at the sword. He tried to slam the door. Braylon jammed his boot into the gap. The wood crunched against his toe. Pain flared hot and sharp, but he didn't move. "Don't," Braylon said. "Go away, Braylon." Silas's voice was a rumble from a deep cave. "I ain't buying what you're selling. Not today, not ever." "I'm not selling," Braylon said. He pushed. He put his shoulder into the wood and shoved. Silas was strong, blacksmith strong, but he wasn't expecting the desperation. He stumbled back. Braylon stepped inside, dragging his bad leg. Miriam slipped in behind him. The forge felt dead. Dust covered everything. The bellows were cracked leather. The tools, hammers, tongs, chisels, hung on the wall under a layer of grime thick enough to write in. The fire pit was clean, cold, and empty. Braylon stopped at the gate. The iron was rusted shut. He vaulted it, landing heavily on his good leg. Miriam climbed over. "You shouldn't be here," Silas said. He looked at Miriam, then back to Braylon. "Take the girl and go home. Plant your crops, pay your taxes." "The crops are dead," Braylon said, "and the tax collector doesn't take payment in monster carcasses." Silas flinched. "Don't say that word." "Hollowed," Braylon said. He stepped closer. "Mimics, shadows, they're back, Silas. One of them was in my house last night. It wore my wife's voice." Silas shook his head. No, we finished it. We burned them out. The king said—" "The king is an echo," Braylon snapped, "and the peace is a lie. Look at me, Silas." Silas refused. He stared at the floor. "Look at me." Silas looked up. His eyes were wet. "I need steel," Braylon said. "I need you to fire the forge. We need to refine salt. We need edges that can cut smoke." "I can't," whispered Silas. He held up his hands. They were shaking. "I haven't struck iron in 10 years. I make hinges, Braylon. I make nails. I don't make those. You made this." Braylon lifted the blight slayer. "You forged the core. You folded the steel." "And look where it got us," Silas roared. The sudden noise made Miriam jump. "Look at you. You're a cripple living in a shack. Look at Jory. Look at me." Silas ripped the collar of his tunic down. The scar tissue was black. Wrong. Not burn. Not blade. It looked like rot that had been frozen in time. Veins of dark ichor pulsed beneath the skin, throbbing in time with a heartbeat that wasn't Silas's. "It woke up," Silas said. His voice broke. "3 days ago. It started burning. I can feel him, Braylon. I can feel the king in the dark." Braylon lowered the sword. He knew that pain. He felt it in his own knee, a dull, radioactive ache that never slept. "I know," Braylon said softly. "I feel it too." "Then run," Silas said. "Take the girl and run south. Go to the coast. Maybe the water stops them." "There is no south," Braylon said. "There is no coast. If we run, they follow. You know that. You were at the Iron Cross." Silas went still. "You remember the siege," Braylon said. He kept his voice low, hard. "You remember the 3rd night, when the walls fell, when the shadows came over the ramparts." Silas closed his eyes. "Stop." "Who held the gate, Silas?" "Braylon, please." "Who stood in the breach when the oil ran out? Who held the line so the refugees could get to the river?" Silas trembled. A tear cut a clean track through the dust on his cheek. "Torbjorn, little Sam." "Little Sam was 16, younger than her." He pointed at Miriam. "He died screaming because his pike broke, because the steel wasn't good enough." Miriam watched them, her eyes wide. She had never heard these names. They weren't in the songs. "I won't let her be Sam," Braylon said. "I won't let her die because we were too scared to light a fire." Silas looked at Miriam. He looked at the terror in her face and the determination in her jaw. He looked at Braylon's ruined leg.
He let out a long, shuddering breath. His shoulders slumped. The tension drained out of him, leaving him looking old and tired. "The bellows are dry," Silas said. "I need grease." "We'll find grease," Braylon said. "The coal is old. It won't burn hot enough for star steel. We'll burn the house if we have to." Silas walked to the wall. He took a heavy hammer down from the rack. He weighed it in his hand, the muscle memory taking over. He wiped the dust off his face with his thumb. "Salt," Silas said. "We need the salt. You can't forge the alloy without the crystal." "I have some," Braylon said. He tapped the pouch on his belt. "Industrial grade. It's weak, but—" "Useless," Silas spat. He dropped the hammer on the anvil. It rang out, a clear, sharp note that cut through the dead air. "Industrial grit is mostly sand. You put that in the fire and it turns to glass. It ruins the temper. You need the pure stuff, the white crystal." "Where do we get it?" asked Miriam. Silas laughed. It was a dry, bitter sound. "You don't. The bureaucracy took it all. Mayor Holloway signed the contract last year. They swept the granaries. They swept the cellars. Sold it all to the factories in the capital for abrasive powder."
Braylon felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "All of it?" "Every ounce they could find," Silas said. "They said the war was over, said we didn't need superstitious rocks taking up space." "There has to be some left," Braylon said. "Someone held out." Silas rubbed his beard. He looked at the floor, thinking. "Miller," he said. "The grain man?" "Miller the Stout. He was quartermaster for the 7th Legion. He never threw anything away. If anyone hid a stash from Holloway's collectors, it's him." Braylon nodded. "We'll go to the mill." "I'll get the fire started," Silas said. He looked at the cold hearth. "It'll take me an hour to get the heat up. Don't come back empty-handed, Braylon. If I'm going to die for this, I want to do it with a hammer in my hand." The mill sat by the river, a towering structure of dark wood and turning gears. The water wheel churned the gray current, a rhythmic thump-splash that vibrated through the ground. The air inside was thick with white dust. Flour hung in the air, dry and choking, coating the rafters, the floor, the heavy grinding stones. It caught the light from the high windows in solid beams. Miller stood by the hopper, hoisting a sack of grain. He was a square man, built like a block of granite, with forearms as thick as Braylon's thighs. He saw them come in. He didn't smile. He dropped the sack. "Braylon," Miller said. He wiped his hands on his apron. A white cloud burst off the fabric. "You look like hell." "I've had a bad night," Braylon said. "I heard. Jory was in here earlier. Said you were asking about missing sheep. Said his eye was leaking." "It's not just sheep anymore. Silas is firing the forge." Miller went still. He looked at the door, then back to Braylon. "Silas hasn't lit that fire since the armistice." "He's lighting it now. We need salt, Miller, the real stuff." Silas sighed. He walked over to a workbench and picked up a rag. He cleaned his hands, slowly, methodically. "Holloway's men came through here twice. They checked the bins, they checked the floorboards. They threatened to burn the place down if I was holding out." "Did you?" Miriam asked. Miller looked at her. He studied her face, the set of her jaw. "You look like your mother," Silas said softly. "She had that same look when she told me I was charging too much for barley." "Please," Miriam said, "we need it." Miller threw the rag down. He walked to the back of the mill, behind the main grinding gear. The noise was louder here, the rumble of the stone crushing grain. He stopped at a section of the wall that looked like solid oak planking. He reached behind a support beam and pressed something. A click echoed over the roar of the water wheel. A panel swung open. It wasn't a large space, just a hollow between the studs. Inside sat a small wooden crate stamped with the faded crest of the Old Kingdom. Miller pulled it out.
He set it on a barrel and pried the lid off. Braylon looked inside. His heart sank. It was star salt, the real thing. The crystals were large, jagged, and glowed with a faint inner light that made the shadows pull back. But there was so little of it. A mound the size of a melon. "That's it?" Braylon asked. "That's it," Miller said. "Enough to tip maybe 20 arrows, or coat one blade if you're stingy." "We need 10 times this," Braylon said. He ran a hand through his hair. "We need to ward the farm. We need to arm Silas. We need—" "You need an army," Miller said. "You have 3 old men and a girl." He pushed the crate toward Braylon. "Take it. It's doing no good sitting here waiting for the rats." Braylon took the crate. It was heavy, heavier than it looked. The salt had density, a physical weight that felt like holding a collapsed star. "Thank you," Braylon said. "Don't thank me yet," Miller said. He picked up a shovel. "If Silas is working, I guess I'd better find my shield. It's serving as the lid for the rain barrel out back." They left the mill with the crate tucked into Miriam's pack. The fog had lifted slightly, but the light was wrong. It was noon, but the sky was a bruised purple, the sun a pale disk behind the clouds. They walked along the river path, heading back toward the village center to circle around to the forge. The tree line of the northern woods pressed close here, the dark pines looming over the water. Braylon stopped. The hair on his arms stood up. The scar on his temple throbbed, a sharp, electric spike of pain. "Dad?" Miriam stopped. She reached for the knife at her belt. "Quiet," Braylon hissed. He scanned the trees. The woods were silent. No birds, no wind in the branches. There, 50 yards out, standing in the shadow of a massive oak. It looked like a man, but it flickered. It was a figure drawn in light, but the light was cold, pale, sickly. It had no features, just a blank, glowing silhouette that vibrated against the background. The Pale Watcher. It didn't move. It just stood there, facing them, observing. "What is that?" Miriam whispered. Her voice trembled. "A scout," Braylon said. Rage flared, hot, blinding. They were watching him. They were watching his daughter. They were measuring him for a coffin. "Take the pack." Braylon shoved the Blight Slayer into Miriam's hands. "Get to Silas. Don't stop."
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more adventures.